Tom, are you okay?
I lost her.
Her?
She was going to be this epic, trilogy-worthy character. I was going to be the hottest writer in Hollywood. But I can't get past Act 1!
You need some writers group therapy. Hello and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers. Are you ready for your session? The doctors are in. And if you like what you hear, make sure you follow us, subscribe. You can find us online at writersgrouptherapy.com and on Spotify. Woot woot!
Yeah, we're doing great there. Hi everybody on Spotify.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
listening. I
Thank you.
got an email from Spotify with some stats. We've only been on there for a few months, and I think there's like over 500 listeners over on Spotify. So
So
we're so
thank you
excited.
for
You guys
spotting
are
us on
awesome.
Spotify. And
Yeah.
you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at WG Therapy individually.
Tom_Loveman on Twitter, Tom Loveman on Instagram.
And I am at Moonlily Music on Instagram and at Roshni Lumino on Twitter. Well,
Happy
we are happy
holidays.
holidays, happy Hanukkah, happy
Yeah.
Christmas, happy Kwanzaa, happy whatever, happy the end of the decade.
Have a happy end of the decade.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Yes, we're fast approaching the end of 2019 and it's kind of coming to a close with a bang. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff
Mhm.
happening.
Yeah. Have you been to many parties yet?
Okay, what's funny to me is so this time of year is the best time to network because everybody has holiday parties. Actually, you know what? I will
Mhm.
say yes. I just signed with a new agency and they had an open house today. And so that was nice to meet. I already met
Ah.
the lady who signed me, but then I was able to meet the head agent and just kind of, chit chat with some other actors and stuff.
Tell
So
'em
that was
how awesome you are.
well, I literally just signed with them like a week and a half ago, so we're just gearing up at this point.
Cool.
Yeah. So how about you?
I had a Christmas party, and it was fun because I got to meet the people in my company. I I've been working at a digital distribution company, and I've been there almost 4 months, and there's about 150 people that work there, and I've met like 10 of them. So
Wow.
the party was a nice way to actually meet my coworkers who I haven't talked to yet. They've passed them in the halls and stuff, but now I actually know a few more people's names, and that's cool. And it's neat because it's kind of a company that's in the industry, and everybody there is has everyone has a side hustle. So you learn that people are, oh, I'm a music person, I'm a writer, I do animation. That was kind of fun. So learning about my coworkers and meeting people.
That's actually really cool. That's really nice, like, when you realize you guys all have a common thing, you know? Like, now
Hmm.
if you wanna make a film or something, you just have to talk to your coworkers.
Sure, I could probably put together a crew just from the people in that room. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, 'tis the season. This is the best time of year to network, I think, in any discipline, honestly, because the holiday parties, open houses, just general meetups, end of the year stuff. Although I feel like this year in Hollywood, this time of year, I usually go to a lot of parties. It's not as many this year. I don't know if I'm just like
Hmm.
my ears not to the ground in the right places, or I think I do know there's an annual party that I would go to every year, that you would come with me, actually, the Greenhouse Gala. They're not hosting it this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Hmm.
they scaled back. So
That one was fun. Yeah.
I know, I love that one. That was always a highlight of my year. So I think some of the parties have kind of scaled back a little bit this year. So
Last year, they started scaling back last year. I remember because of the Writers Guild stuff. The agencies
mm.
stopped having the holiday parties because it would be really awkward to be in the room with the writers and the agents, and you're fighting. And so I think last year, a couple of the agencies, in lieu of having big parties, they made donations to charities, which is nice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe that's part of it because that fight is still kinda happening.
Very big,
So,
yeah.
they're probably like, "Yeah, let's not do that right now, it's
It's
awkward."
on its way to the Supreme Court at this point, I think, for one aspect of it. So,
My goodness, that's going on for quite some time.
but happier thoughts.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and you and I actually met at a holiday party, so
We
yay,
did, we
yay
did.
holidays. Yes.
So you never know. Go out there, network, meet people, eat some food. It's great.
Yeah, you'll make lots of cool movies together and other fun stuff and write things and
Yay. So the other thing that's happening in Hollywood right now is the Pay Up Hollywood movement, which
I Some assistants are getting a early Christmas present, I read.
Yeah, it's funny because assistant jobs, whether it's being a writer's assistant or even just like assisting as like an executive assistant or something, anything in the industry, any sort of assistant job is usually a way of getting your foot in the door and meeting the power players and putting, your face in front of them so they're like, we
Yeah.
want to bump that person up. But they don't make a lot of money.
No, but the cost of living in LA has gone just up so much that there hasn't been the increase in what they do get paid, so it's getting harder and harder to be an assistant and focus on that without having to have one or two side gigs.
Which you really can't. If you're an assistant, like, that is your full-time job. You can't really also work somewhere else unless I mean, maybe a weekend job, but honestly, like, you'd probably kill yourself. Because I feel like, especially during pilot season or
Yeah.
something, depending on what kind of assisting job you have, you just don't have extra time.
No, I mean, right now I'm working a 40-hour a week job and doing my freelance and trying to write. It's a lot. It's not, you don't have the energy or the time really.
Mhm. Yeah, but there are some changes. I know, you just saw that article, you said, Verve is that an agency?
Verb, yeah.
Mhm.
They are a literary agency and a talent agency.
Yep, so they are leading the charge in upping the pay, which is good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for even like mailroom assistants.
Mhm.
So everybody's getting a bump, which is really nice.
This is it's kind of related. It's kind of funny. So over Thanksgiving, our microwave and our stove broke, and so we were out without
Did
like.
they like have a suicide pact or something?
Well, okay, the microwave already had been kind of sparking, and then I should send. I'll send you the
Sparky the
picture.
microwave.
We'll,
That's a good
we'll
name
put
for a
the
microwave.
we'll put the photo of what happened of to my stove on the show notes because it's hilarious. I was pressing the panel, and the electric panel for the timer and stuff, fell in. I don't know
Oh,
what
it
it
like
did.
it like went. You pushed the button and it kept going into
Yeah,
the stove. Okay,
yeah,
that's
so
great.
I didn't have a stove or a microwave, so we waited for, like, a few days, and then somebody came in and gave us installed a whole new one. Really nice guy. It was funny, though, we were chit-chatting, and he made a comment about how, because I guess he knew I was an actor or something. He's like, "Oh, you're an actor?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and we were chit-chatting, and he goes, "Wow, I'm impressed that you don't live with 5 other people." Because he mentioned he goes to other houses to
Oh
fix
yeah,
appliances, and he sees, you know, 6
bunk
people
beds everywhere,
living
and
in a
yeah.
house because of how low we get paid. So,
I
yeah,
looked at an apartment once where the living room was the room that was being rented.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it is.
Yeah, and I know people who live like four people in a two bedroom or 10 people in a house, crazy stuff like that.
Mhm. Yep.
But that's, I guess, what it's come to. So
The
all you other
Hollywood dream.
agencies, come on, get on board, pay your assistants more.
Help us live the Hollywood dream so we can
Yes,
at
there
least
you
eat and pay rent. Yeah. So, speaking of dreams, kind of, I don't know.
go.
Interestingly enough, because, I think a lot of YouTube creators are feeling the pinch now, it has to happen by the end of the year.
They've
The
got kind of a
COPPA.
scary new year coming.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
this is
COPPA, it's not really a scandal, but like the whatever is happening. So COPPA stands for Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And uh, as of January 1st, a lot of YouTube creators, myself included, were all going to be under the gun over something that seems quite arbitrary and really nothing has been resolved. So I know you haven't really followed it, right? Too much.
yeah, I've heard about it, and it was in the news a while ago, but it's finally being like applied or enacted, but the rules aren't exactly straightforward, so it's leaving everybody kind of confused, and they don't know what's going to happen. So
So let's explain what's happening here. So, a couple years ago, so from what I've pieced together, all right, guys, this is not legal advice or whatever. If you're really interested, go research it a little bit more. But apparently, YouTube is supposed to be ages 13 and up. And when you sign in for an account, you agree that you are 13 years or older. And apparently, they weren't following that. And they got hit with a fine a few years ago because children under 13 were watching. And part of it, too, had to do with data. I believe they were collecting data on the
yeah,
children and selling it or doing something with the data. So that is why they got fined. And this COPPA thing had been kind of simmering under the surface. And it's now coming to a head where they are going to enforce it. But what's causing creators to freak out is You as a creator have to declare your channel or your individual videos or both to be either child friendly or not child friendly. And YouTube is staying out of it. They're like, you decide. If you decide wrong, we'll hit you with a $42,000 fine per video. But some of the guidelines are very arbitrary, like, do you use bright colors in your video? Is it about games? Is it about a certain type of food or something like that, that would appeal to children? And so, especially for people who kind of do both, I know I have a gaming channel. I'm like, I don't think it's child friendly. I mean, children can watch it. I'm not swearing. There's no sex. There's no violence, but it wasn't intended for children. And the interesting thing is, if you choose wrong, you will get fined. And it's so vague that nobody really knows how to define their videos. Some creators are just opting out of YouTube altogether. They're like, forget it. I'm closing the channel down because they've got,
It's kind of a chilling effect.
yeah, hundreds of thousands of videos, and they're like, I can't decide.
And
Unlike
this is just right now affecting YouTube and Google, not all the other streaming platforms.
Well, YouTube. I mean, Google. I mean, yes, I know Google's the parent company, but Google's not. There's
Yeah.
no Google streaming, whatever. Yeah, it's just YouTube. And interestingly enough, I mean, obviously, if we were writing for like, you know, cable or NBC or ABC or something like that,
HBO or yeah.
what you can get away with. You can swear. You can show nudity. You can't, depending on the channel. But YouTube is probably the only uh, creative outlet that isn't really regulated, and they've only just figured out how to monetize it in recent years. And the COPPA thing also affects creators as well, because depending on how you declare your videos, they'll take away some of the monetization. They will take away the comments. I know already people were complaining because some of their subscribers were disappearing, so that was already happening. So it's definitely going to change the landscape of the channel. And because YouTube is used partly as an entertainment, as in scripted, kind of programming, that'll change that too.
Yeah, I don't think it'll affect anything behind like a paywall, like YouTube Red or like I said, HBO. Anything you pay for, for the longest time, the FTC is kind of they were always in charge of regulating the airwaves. That's why they were created, because that was a
Mhm.
public space and it was limited. The spectrum, as they called it, was limited. You can only fit so many TV stations, so many radio stations in certain bandwidths. So it was regulated by the government. Then cable came along and said, "Yo, you can't regulate us because we're not on the airwaves." So that kind of became the dividing line between what you could and couldn't regulate as far as content went. Now it seems like those lines are blurring because even the broadcast stuff is streaming now. And they're all launching their own streaming services. I happen to have DC Universe, the DC's streaming movies and TV shows, and there's a new show called Titans, which is kind of an adult version of the Teen Titans, and they swear a lot on it, and I'm like, whoa, how did they get away with that?
Mhm.
But it's a pay service, so you're agreeing to terms of use when you sign up for something like that, that I suppose covers them. Now with
Yeah.
YouTube, you were telling me YouTube says when you sign up with a channel or as a broadcaster that they they don't take any responsibility for what you say on your channel, right?
I don't believe so. I mean, because I watch a lot of YouTube. It's probably actually my main source of entertainment, to be honest, over like even watching a broadcast or Netflix or something like that. And I will watch, like, say, gaming channels where they'll swear, and it's not even like, they'll drop an F bomb, something that would totally get censored on broadcast. They'll say it. So, and
Do you
what's
watch a lot of Twitch? Do they do that on Twitch a lot, or
I haven't really done followed too much into. Ooh, that's an interesting point, because I don't watch a lot of Twitch. Um, I wonder if they'll start regulating it. But the interesting thing again with this COPPA thing, it has nothing to do with nudity or language, or violence, which as writers we understand that, right? I can't swear a lot on an ABC show, but on HBO, sky's the limit, right? So it doesn't affect those things. That's not what they're flagging. They're flagging really random things that don't actually fall under what is it, FCC, right? Normal FCC regulation.
FCC or FTC, yeah, both of
Yeah.
the
So I
two of
think
them,
that's
yeah.
what's confusing because honestly, like, if you said to me, "Oh, yeah, we need to make sure there's no swearing or whatever on your channel," that makes more sense to me than, "But it's a gaming channel
That's
and"
actually more of an FCC thing, actually. The
Mhm,
Federal Communications Commission or whatever is more content.
mhm.
FTC is about trade, um, and marketing and advertising to children is what one of their areas of focus. So I think that's part of it too.
I mean, unless they made YouTube a paid site, which I know they were trying to do a little bit with YouTube Red, which I don't know if it really took off the way they wanted it to. And I don't know if COPPA is affecting YouTube Red. I haven't looked into it because I've only been following it on the general YouTube,
Yeah.
you
Well, the
know.
bottom line is if you have a YouTube channel, find out what you need to know now because it's 2 weeks away, and you don't want to get caught by surprise. We'll
Yeah.
put a link to there's a link to the FTC's news about this coming of age regulation that you're going to want to check out.
And what's interesting too about it is I know a lot of creators are upset and, there's petitions and there's, this and that. I don't think anything's really changed as far as, they're not backing down. The government's not backing down. But I also wonder when it hits, and assuming it goes through the way they say it will it affect other streaming services or online things, online
Podcasts
channels,
like us,
podcasts. I mean,
yeah,
because yeah, that's a good point. Podcasts aren't necessarily regulated either.
no,
Anybody can create them and anybody can listen to them, and there's no filter or gatekeeper.
mm-hmm,
It's an interesting thing.
yeah,
Although I do know with podcasts, you do have to say, this has mature content or it's not intended for, you know, listeners under
yeah. I
18 or
hear those
whatever.
occasionally. Yeah,
Yeah. But again, that has to do with regulation of swearing or a little
mm-hmm.
bit of content, sort of thing. That has to do with more of that. But it'll be interesting to see because I feel like the guidelines on the YouTube COPPA thing are very arbitrary and don't necessarily make sense with what we know to be normally regulated content. And I think that's why everyone's in such an uproar. Yeah.
But we don't want to scare you guys away from creating content. Keep creating content.
Please do. There's always going to be an outlet for whatever it is that you create and you write. Trust us on
Yeah.
that. There's always an outlet.
If you are interested in creating a narrative podcast, which is very up and coming these days, should you? Is your project suited for a narrative podcast? Right now, about 40 to 50% of Americans listen to podcasts. It's a huge number, actually. It's been growing about 25%, a year.
Hmm.
So it's a great place to, share your stories. And Roshni, you are a narrative podcaster, or well, you've been producing one. Will be coming out this next year in March. I think,
Oh
right?
my gosh, next year. It'll be coming out next decade in 2020.
Yes, in a decade she'll have it done. So you're a great example here. You had a story that you felt was really well suited for a narrative podcast, and you wrote it and you produced it, and now it's coming out in a little while. And what drove you to want to do that, and what made your story a good narrative podcast story?
Ooh, well, let me tell you a little bit about it first. So it's called Expat. It's coming out March 17 of 2020. And that date we picked on purpose because it does involve Irish culture. So it's actually sort of autobiographical. It's about a Filipino American who falls in love with an Irishman and all the hilarity that ensues with not just men and women interacting, trying to relate, but also cultural and country differences and things
So
like
I guess who's coming to dinner in a different twist.
that. Yep. Yep. And when I wrote it, it was interesting because I've actually retooled it as well to use for fellowship submissions so I've written it as a TV pilot as well. But I wrote it as a podcast originally. And the thought behind that, and interestingly enough, if you look at it, so it's 6 episodes, half an hour each, scripted comedy. There's an over the 6 episode, there's an arc. I mean, it really could just be a TV show. All you have to do is just tweak a few things. But I picked podcast format because I could get it out into the public faster and I could get it out cheaper. And we recorded it all over a 2-day period. I'm in the middle of editing it right now. In fact, I've got to talk with my director and co-producer, go over episode 1 through 4 notes and stuff like that. So we're plowing away. It's good.
Cool.
It's good. Um, but I think the biggest thought about it behind it too, besides the fact that it's faster, it's cheaper. I mean, for years they've been saying podcasts is kind of where people are discovering content. And I think I've heard that as long as, like, say 4 years ago. Podcasts are the way to go. And I think now people are just like, big name people are just beginning to go, "Ooh, podcasts." Because I've actually heard other established TV writers, either they're doing a podcast, and I mean narrative now. I'm not talking talk show. They are either doing a narrative podcast or they want to do a narrative podcast. So, if even the big fish are looking at it, you're in the right spot. And I think the other reason why they're really good is, if you're a writer, think about it when you're pitching and you have to sign off all the forms, right? You're like, okay, yes, I'm signing off the form. You didn't steal my idea, blah, blah, blah. Before they'll even look at your script, you're asking somebody who doesn't know you, assuming that it wasn't, somebody recommended you to this agent or whoever, you're asking them to read 30 pages, 90 pages. That's a lot of time, you know? Even if you send them a short film or a clip of, a movie you did, they still have to sit down and spend 15 minutes watching your film or whatever. And they might not even know what got changed in the editing room. But I can send you a link to my podcast. I don't have to sign any forms. You can listen to that while washing dishes, while driving around town, whatever. So it's a really easy way to get my writing and my acting in front of people without jumping through all those hoops.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of a really great way to show off your writing skill because it's all dialogue. It's dialogue and sound effects. So you really have to tell the story with one arm tied behind your back because you don't have the visual.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you are doing something, I'm trying to think of something that's really visual, like, say, the movie Gravity, that'd be a horrible podcast. It's extremely visual, right?
Yeah.
But if you're doing something that uh, has witty dialogue, or you can kind of set the stage, like, what's a really good example? It's an audiobook, but World War Z would be
Oh,
that is an amazing thing to listen to because of the way it's written. Have you read the book?
I did.
You read the book. Okay. So
Yeah, great. Yeah.
we'll do a spoiler out here for anybody who's seen the movie but hasn't
Warning, warning.
read the book.
Well,
The
the
book
book and the movie are totally
They're
different.
completely different, yeah. So the author wrote World War Z like the zombie apocalypse had already happened, and this is the account of the survivors. Now, when you listen to the audiobook, they brought in professional actors and they read it like it's an NPR broadcast, like interviews and stuff like that. It's chilling. It's amazing. It's so well done. And it's like listening to an NPR show, and you kind of forget that you're actually listening to a book. So if you can write something like that and have it acted out well, wow, you're in the ballpark right there.
Kind of goes back to the old War of the Worlds, the Orson Welles broadcast that sent people screaming and running into the streets, freaking out because they thought Martians had actually landed in New Jersey.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
and when you think about it, so okay, so we did those 4 short films, and Reclamation, the sci-fi piece, obviously took the most time and money because of the special effects. But
like
uh
2 years and $25,000.
yeah. So you were the executive producer. What did we spend, not including marketing, on those 4 films?
Yeah, it was
What
about
what did we spend?
30,000 for all four of them. Yeah,
Okay. So I just did a 6 episode narrative podcast. It's about 3 hours of content. So I think the short films would be what, about like maybe an hour and a half of
45 minutes
45 minutes.
probably.
Okay.
Yeah,
So 45 minutes of film cost $30,000. Granted, some of that was special effects and sci-fi stuff. I
A
did
lot of catering.
Okay, okay, fair enough. But I did the podcast, 3 hours of content. Now granted, a lot of my crew and cast worked on deferred payment, but assuming everyone gets paid to the full amount that I want them to get paid, I probably spent about 5,000 or less.
Yeah, sounds like a good deal.
I just did an entire season for 5,000 or less. So, where do you wanna spend your money too, if you're trying to get it out there?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you can make anything, as they say, for any budget. So it all depends what you're willing to spend and what you're able to spend to
Mhm.
get it made. Obviously, if you can get your friends to work for free, you can get it done cheaper. But
I mean, but we did have
the idea
some
is you can
actors.
get it done. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
can
was
get
gonna
it
say we did
done.
have some actors work for free, our actors on all those films, and
Oh
that was
yeah,
that was not even deferred payment, you
no,
know?
no,
So,
they just love the project so much they wanted to be in it.
but even with the actors for free, we still spent $30,000.
I fed them very well.
You did.
I
Thank
feed
you,
everyone really well. Yeah,
thank
all
you.
that catering.
I fed people too.
So the pros of doing a narrative podcast: cost, time. You can get it done faster. You can get it done cheaper. You can, it's something people can listen to easier because it's something they can listen to while they work out or while they're driving. They don't have to be in front of a TV. They don't have to read, X number of pages, and it really showcases your ability to write. I would say write really good dialogue and tell a story without having the visual effects. So those
But
are all good pros.
but
Are there
there
any
are
cons?
cons, there are cons,
What
yes.
are the cons?
So I would say, first of all, if you are doing something that's scripted, you want to have really good voice actors and a really good director. You don't want to skimp on that. I've actually, because now I'm following all the podcasting world, and there are people out there who are like, "Oh my gosh, I would, why are these so poorly acted?" So you definitely want to get good actors. You want to get great sound because it's all going to be sound, right? There's no visuals. Even on a film, you need good sound, right? But sound is going to be crucial. So you need to spend your money on a good engineer, on good editing, mixing and mastering if need be. So those are where um, you really need to pay attention. And if it's a script that's not if it's visual heavy, like if it has a lot of visual jokes, then it doesn't translate. It has to be something that you don't need to rely on the visuals for.
That makes good sense.
Yeah. I keep trying to get you to do some of yours as a podcast.
Most of my stuff is horror and sci-fi, so it's a little trickier because they're very visual. I'm a very visual writer, I think. But my latest little comedy bit could be, could be just dialogue. That could be a little audio thing if I wanted to. Actually, I just want to film that. Yeah, I keep thinking about it, but I still have my films that are already done, so I've already spent the money on those.
Yeah, that's
Trying to get my money's worth out of those still.
Oh, I will say the other thing too, if you are gonna do it, know ahead of time what your format is. So, for example, we are doing writers group therapy. We do this, well, we were doing it once a week. Now we're doing it once a month, but we're consistent. And if you're doing a narrative podcast, even if it's a season, just be consistent when you put it out there. Be like, okay, the entire season's going out in these 3 months or something, and be consistent with when you upload it and down to the time, because I think it's really easy to lose listeners if you're not consistent with uploading and when
Yeah.
content out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Cool.
yeah.
All
def-
right.
So now the decade's coming to a close. What's been your highlight of the decade, and what do you want to accomplish in the
Oh
next
gosh.
10 years?
Well, I'm still trying to get my resolutions from this year completed, which was to finish these scripts I started the year before.
Oh geez.
I've been so busy this year doing other projects. We worked on the puppet stuff, and I just been, stretching myself too thin. So I'm still trying to find a point at which I can really focus on writing finishing those scripts up. So that's my continuing resolution.
That's awesome.
That sounds like a congressional thing. We will pass a continuing resolution to keep the government open. I have a continuing resolution to write my script. But
2019 has returned.
I did start development on my first video game, which does have a writing component to it because it's a word game. So more to come on that next year.
Exciting.
But I did start it. I'm like, that was one of my things I wanted to do this year, was get one of my game concepts into development.
Which was a lot of fun. I got to beta test it, and I'm really
Oh yeah,
you
we
do
did
any
a
beta testing? 'Cause that was fun.
it's an app, but I built a physical prototype. I built three of them so I could do some play testing with my friends to get the kinks worked out of the game, and it really worked great. So yeah, so I actually had a couple calls with my developer already about making sure they understand what we're doing as they get further into the coding process. So.
That's really cool.
How about you? How about what's your end of year and next year looking like?
Oh, wow.
More editing, I suppose.
I feel like even in the last 3 years, I've really come into my own as a writer and as an actor and as a creator. Like, I really feel like I found my creative voice and I know where I'm going with things, so that's been really good. And it's exciting to produce your own project. I really love that feeling. So, obviously, next year is going to be releasing Expat and working on a season two. And beyond that, I mean, I like the podcast thing. So I have a couple other narrative podcast ideas that I'm kicking around. So we'll see. We'll see how well season one does. And then I might do season two of Expat concurrently with like a whole new show just because I like being really busy, I guess.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing Expat and talking about whatever your next one is. We're because of our writers group, we get to see what she's working on earlier, so we get the inside scoop.
That's so true.
So hopefully we'll see that then. All
Great.
right, what are you guys working on for the end of the year and next year? Let us know what your writing ambitions are. Send us a
Yes.
note.
Yes, and we hope you all have a wonderful holiday season, and we will see you guys in 2020.